the chat window. I'll be trying to monitor the chat, and I'm sitting in a desk across the office from Chris, so I'll throw things at him if I can't get his attention. And feel free to unmute yourself if you want to jump in. We'd like to keep this more interactive than not. Chris will be sharing some slides with you. Fortunately, this is not going to be death by PowerPoint. He's going to be doing some demonstrations, and we want to make it valuable for you. I know your time is valuable to you, and we want to make the most of this. This is not a sales pitch. We're hopefully providing some useful information, whether you use it during this time of emergency or down the road, whether it's some other, God forbid, active shooter or fire or other emergency type of event that you might be able to use this technology with. So with that, the recording has started. So I'll turn it over to Chris and have at it, sir.
Hi guys, thanks so much for joining today. I understand everybody's busy, so bear with me. There is going to be some PowerPoint in the beginning, and then we're going to be actually going into an interactive demo. So just a heads up, there are some PowerPoints, but like we said, this is not going to be death by PowerPoint because that is not how I believe we should be teaching people. So a little bit about us. BT Pros is a Microsoft Gold partner. We're a consulting firm, as Michael said. We specialize in EDU and higher ed. We've been working all across the East Coast, actually, I would say pretty much across the US at this point. So we have the market kind of pigeonholed for you guys, and we've worked with you before. We understand your needs. A little bit about who I am. I am a firefighter, an EMT. I'm a Teams consultant and an account executive for BT Pros. I'm a certified Microsoft Innovative Educator, and I've got an entourage of incident management certifications behind my back as well. So my whole goal is to help us bridge the gap between technology, first response, and education. So that's really what I want to work on today, show you guys how we're going to be using technology in the classroom, how we can leverage that in our emergency response scenarios, and how we can collaborate and communicate together. Everybody that I looked on the survey so far owns some level of Microsoft licensing. So whether that be A1, A3, or A5, I believe most people on this call are going to be A3 or A5. At this point, I would ask anybody who's on the call, if in the chat window you want to go ahead and just introduce who you are, what school you're with, and what level of Microsoft licensing you have, as well as whether you're Google Class or not. That would be just some information to kind of let other people within the presentation know who you are, where you are, let other people know that you are here, and that we're all here working together to achieve the same thing. So I'm going to have Michael Huffley monitor the chat. So please feel free to introduce yourself, and I'll keep going, and then we'll touch back on that in a little bit. So how can we leverage Office 365 to provide flexible communication, collaboration, and integrate technology? So one of the best things that I ever learned in management from Brené Brown actually was we need to address people's SFDs. So we have to cover their shitty first drafts. Every time there's major change within an organization, whether that be through emergency or through plan change, we've all played the game telephone, and we all understand how we can go from A to B to C, and by the time we get to the end of the line, people haven't heard the full story, and then they start creating their own ideas of what actually is going to happen or what may be happening. So we want to make sure that we address people's concerns first. And one of the best ways to do that is to go ahead and have a centralized place where everybody can communicate together. I'm hearing a little background noise, so if everybody could just ensure that they're muted, that would be great. Thank you so much. Michael, you can actually go, one of the cool features of Teams is when you're on a conference call, you can actually go into the participants window and see who is muted or unmuted and click on the ellipsis and mute them. It's a really great feature when you're having conference calls with people. So like I said before, we want to make sure that we address people's concerns. And I always say, if somebody's thinking it, many people are thinking it. It just takes one to ignite a conversation and keep things moving forward and cover SFDs. And we want to make sure that that's something that we do. So Teams is a great collaborative space to do that, to disseminate information across your organization and keep moving forward. Like I said, this isn't a sales pitch, so I'm going to show you all the benefits of Teams and what it looks like, but I'm actually not here to sell you something. So that's actually kind of fun. And then support staff. So a lot of times we look at or people within our organizations or groups within our organization, and we always forget about like the support staff. So we have building and grounds, maintenance, cafeteria staff. hall monitors, they can all still leverage the same technology, just in different ways. One of the challenges we're facing now is, how do we feed students if we're not having them in school? Well, a team is a great place to bring together cross-functional groups within your organization, where we can actually have maybe cafeteria staff working together with transportation staff, working together with some additional staff you may have, so that we can all work together, develop a plan and a strategy to move forward and bring value to our students or community members. So this is a great place to do that. So some cool ways we can leverage Microsoft Power Automate. So it is one of the coolest features I've ever seen in Microsoft. As somebody who doesn't particularly like writing hundreds of lines of code, it kind of takes me back to Visual Basic days, where we can actually go ahead and just use like templates or buttons to create lines of code to create automated processes. So some of the cool things we can do is we can send emails, whether that be for an approval, or if we would just want to attach some documentation to send out to people, we can do that. We can send Teams messages, we can post in channels, and we can actually send text messages to users too. Now, this is a premium service, as Microsoft calls it. So it requires integration with a third-party vendor. So you're gonna, and it uses API calls to do that. So you would find a third-party vendor to work with. Microsoft has a list of them, but that functionality is still available. We can create planner tasks. This is super cool. I'll talk about that in a second. We can get notifications that we've run our workflow successfully. We could post tweets to social media accounts, and we can also go ahead and do many more things within this. So some of the cool things you can do is we can use Planner to work amongst our staff and make sure that we have a collaborative space. One of the main things with, I always say good management techniques, but anytime you're working in a team period, you want to go together. Oops, sorry guys. You want to work together and make sure that you set clear expectations, roles, and responsibilities. Planner is a great place to do that. So whether you're working in a team and you want to post this within Teams itself, or you just want to have a separate app on your phone, Planner is that space where you can set those roles, responsibilities, and expectations. You can monitor the progress of your plans that you've put in place. It helps administration gain visibility into the sticking points of a situation, and then also communicate on processes and tasks. So within Planner, you can actually comment on what you're doing, and we can see, okay, here's where something's going, here's what we're doing, what are people's challenges trying to get this task done, especially in an emergency response scenario where we have multiple departments trying to work together, and some level of administration is trying to monitor to make sure all of this is getting done. Planner can be that great place where you can all come together and say, okay, these are the tasks that are assigned to me in my department, and I can actually mark that off real time, or I can give a status update as to where we are. So instead of using radios or cell phones or text messages, we can bring an entire department or entire school organization together, whether that be the entire district or a building or just a team. We can bring everybody together and show them expectations of what they should be doing. And actually, like I said, with Automate or with Power Automate now, we can actually create automated runbooks to run. So if something happens, we can have it do all of this for us. So that's some really cool stuff. I'll actually show you guys that in a little bit, and we can see how we can actually leverage that technology. We can also use Teams to have virtual conferences too. So there's a lot of cool stuff. So next, we're going to see, you want to try e-learning. Well, this is super cool. Everybody wants to do it. And unfortunately, normally we spend months trying to develop a strategy and a plan to roll that out to our organization. Now we have days. If you're fortunate, if you have a week or two left at this point. So we need to address basic student needs, basic instructor needs. How do we meet those needs? And then Oreo. So we want to see, what is our objective? Whose responsibility is it? What is the expectation? And how are we going to organize that? Remind, just these are all things that we have to take into consideration when we're doing online learning and trying to stand something up basically overnight for some organizations. So what are some basic student needs? They need to have access to reading materials and course materials. They have to know how they can submit assignments and receive feedback. They have to be able to submit questions if they have questions on the assignments. What does the turnaround time look like for those questions? And then also, what are some important communications that we have to give to our students? So what can they expect from me as a teacher? What can they expect from the school? What do I expect of them? We have to give them a place where they can collaborate together, and we also need to show them how to do that. Okay, now instructors have needs too. They're humans. I know I'm a needy person myself, so one of the things we want to look at are, I've kind of broken it out into 6 different sections. So we look at having a space, technology, plan, communication, engagement, and empathy. I want to touch on this slide at least about technology. So one of the things we want to look at is we want to make sure that the students and teachers have a laptop or some sort of device that they can access their content with. Headphones and a microphone. This is a great thing. We find a lot of times that if you're just trying to use the speaker and the microphone on your computer, we get a lot of background noise, and this can be distracting to not only faculty members, but mainly students, because if they're getting a lot of background noise, they're more likely to pay attention to that than the actual person presenting. A webcam. You'll see I always do my calls with a webcam on because this engages the audience. When you just have a person talking behind a screen with no interactivity, people are more likely to doze off or pay attention to other things. But when you have them looking at a screen and working with people, like I can see Michael on the call right now, people are likely to engage and interact with you. Internet. We can't assume that everybody in our organization is going to have steady access to internet. So if you're going to deploy an e-learning scenario, we definitely recommend that you pull your students and your faculty members and ensure that they have the resources necessary. Well, that's going to be your main key to success. Understand, do my students and my faculty have internet? Do they have the technology necessary, or do I have to lend that to them? We want to make sure we do that before we just go ahead and make assumptions, because we may end up setting ourselves up for failure, not only our students, but our faculty as well. And then finally, a backdrop. If we're going to be doing this for a long time, a lot of people recommend having a backdrop. Well, this isn't truly necessary. So with Teams, we can actually use the blur background feature. So when you guys look at Michael Heffley, you'll actually see he's got that turned on now, and that actually blurs the background. So this can be leveraged within a class scenario. So a teacher, if they don't have a clean white space like I do behind me, and if they're in a smaller studio apartment like we see in major cities, they can actually go ahead and use the blur background, and that allows them to block out all context behind them and make sure that there's no personal artifacts being shown. So this is a great feature, and students can use this as well. So you'll see now Michael has it where his black background is not blurred, and then if he goes ahead and blurs it, you'll see just how much it can actually increase the bokeh behind him. And then we need to make sure that we have a quiet space and a plan for success. So let's look at how we can meet some of those needs. I always recommend that we start with space. So we want to make sure that we find a quiet space where you are. You can make sure that your students also have a quiet space where they can set up shop. We want to make sure that we engage the parents as well. So help the students find a quiet space where they won't be distracted by people or technology. We need to have a plan. And this is where I chuckle. This kind of comes into my emergency response planning and all of the training I've taken. I kind of am treating this at this point that we need to triage the situation. So this basically is just one large incident for our organization. And now we're going through and we're tagging everybody and saying, all right, let's triage what we have now and try to figure out what is going to be mission critical within our organization and make a prioritization list. At this point, with the time that we have left in the semester and the way things are going now, we need to remember that less is going to be more. When we're standing up an e-learning scenario, this is going to be new for most students. Assignments that are done online are likely to take twice as long as they are in a classroom, so we need to prioritize. If you have an LMS, that's great, a learning management system, but if you don't, Teams is here for you and it can do that for you. It lets you set due dates, attach files, create assignments, and write descriptions and guidance as far as what you expect from the students. You can then load those assignments into the assignment section for students, and then the teacher actually has a place where they can grade from that and give constructive feedback and give that back to the student. We'll take a look at that in depth later in this presentation. And then we need to check out additional resources that are required for our students to be successful. So we're standing up an e-learning scenario and we've done things over and over the same way. Now we need to look at all of the assignments I'm giving to the students. I, as in the educator, should be reviewing everything I'm giving to my students and making sure that they have the success criteria necessary from where they are to get the assignments done and to complete their work on time. They may not have access to on-premise resources if they're working remote. So do they need to be in a lab with special technology, whether it be software, or do they need to have access to a chem lab? That may not be available if we're working remote. So we need to make sure we review our assignments and make sure that they don't have to have access to ancillary resources that they may not have. I always talk about empathy, and this is interesting when we're talking about students. What does empathy mean? So we need to make sure that we're understanding our students' learning scenario. We have to assign them a reasonable workload if they're going to be working remote. For everybody, this is most likely new for you and you don't have an e-learning plan stood up already, and students aren't doing this. Flexibility is going to be key to ensuring students are not put to a disadvantage by suddenly moving online. I definitely recommend considering implementing flexible deadlines anytime we're doing something like this, especially if we're moving something this fast. And we need to make sure we set expectations with students and let them know that if they can't meet their deadlines, that's okay. Engaging with students doesn't just mean keeping them interactive, but it really also means that we have to understand the condition of our students. Their lives are changing, and we have to find the best ways to get teachers to work with them and work rather in spite of conditions with these conditions. So we have to find the best ways to work with our students and try to develop methodologies that are going to work best. So some of there's actually a quote that I saw and I really like this. In the current crisis, it is important to remember that going online is not the same as teaching or learning. We have to develop that and cultivate that within our organization. Just because I shove everybody online doesn't mean they're going to learn. Learning is something that's cultivated within an organization, and that's something you as an educator and education assistant staff have to create yourselves. So let's be empathetic to ourselves as well. As teachers, I know we're all kind of perfectionists, and that can be our downfall, but we have to treat this as unusual. This is not something normal, and we don't normally throw people online this quickly without a plan. This is an emergency response to a scenario that is out of our control, and rather than expecting ourselves to spin up a well-developed online class overnight, we have to set expectations with ourselves as well and let ourselves know that it's okay. This may not be pretty, but this is just for now. This isn't forever. So be comfortable with putting something out there that may not be forever. This is something we're doing to work together to get a goal or purpose out there. So communication, engagement, and technology. These are three things that kind of all go hand in hand at this point, so I chunked all of these together. We can't keep doing the same things over and over again. It just doesn't work. Especially in these times of online change, we need to give explicit instructions to our students. We need to clearly define our expectations. Administrators, this goes for you too. You need to clearly define what you expect of your faculty and staff members. You can't just throw them online and say, all right, guys, figure it out, and then expect them to give you these reports that they don't even know they have to give you. So administrators, you still need to set your expectations as well. This is some great ways to do that are to have town halls and live meetings just like we're having now with all of your staff members together. You know, the old way of doing it was to bring them all into the cafeteria or bring them into the auditorium. We can't do that, but we can virtually do that now. And this is a great tool for you as educational administrators to bring people together. Whether this be through things like using a general team within Teams, or we have breakout channels for each organization. One of the great things to do is to write weekly posts that summarize what's happening for the week. Educators, this is going to look like writing weekly assignments, what's coming up for the week, what are some quizzes that are coming up, what did we do last week, just a light recap, and then also here's some of the recorded lectures we're going to be looking at this week. We have to communicate our plan. So if you're fortunate enough to still have your students in school, whether that be for a day or two coming up, one of the things we can do is do a quick walkthrough with our students in the classroom. So put that up on the board or on the TV or however you can get that to your students, whether they log in on their one-to-one devices in front of you and they all work together. If you don't have that, that's okay too. We can record these remotely and send this to our students so that they can watch the online orientation if we must and say this is what we're going to be doing, and this is a walkthrough of the technology and how you guys can use it and what you can expect from me and what I expect from you. Now we have to think about learning methodologies. If we're going to be doing things asynchronously, so that's more of the I post something and the students respond within their time. Some of the really cool things you can do are stuff like daily check-ins. I'm a huge fan of this. So if your students aren't able to join you at a specific time, one thing you can do, and I like to do it the night before, is to record a little daily check-in, and I have that auto post in the morning. So that's something where I go through and I say, hey guys, here's what we're going through today. This is what we did yesterday. You guys are doing a great job. And here's a little fun fact of what I'm doing. Right now, we're missing out on a lot of that interactive one-to-one scenarios, and people can start to feel isolated. That time in the halls where students are transitioning classes, transitioning between assignments, and also just that before school and after school communication that happens between students and faculty members. I know when I was in school, I was best friends with some of my teachers. And to be isolated like this now, I'm seeing a lot on social media from other students and from faculty members as well, that people are going to now start feeling isolated if they don't already. Seniors, they've been working towards this their entire life, basically, to get to this graduation point. They're isolated from their friends. They can't see their favorite teachers. They didn't have a chance to say goodbye. Posting online check-ins with little, hey, here's what we did. And, I went to the grocery store yesterday and I can't believe I saw this. This can help bring people together, and your students can do that too. Create exit tickets for assignments with deliverable items. So if you're going to be in K through 12 and you want to make sure your students are checking their daily check-in video with you, you can actually publish it as an assignment. I'll show you guys that in a little bit. I actually did one for you guys, and have a little attachment to that. So they have to fill out, what was the question of the day, and submit a response. And that way you can keep track of whether they're watching it and how engaged they were. So one of the biggest takeaways is that what we're finding in research on effective online teaching is showing us that, if I can say it one more time, we cannot teach the same way online that we would have in person. We need to innovate, and we need to use the tools that are available to us. Efficiency in delivering content is going to be the main thing that we can all work together for. Microsoft Teams brings together all of these cool things. I'm probably the biggest Teams evangelist you'll ever meet. I think it's the coolest thing ever. All of my coworkers will tell you that they hate me for it, and it can become a little overwhelming at times. Hey guys, why aren't we using Teams for this? Well, innovation and technology are kind of the things that I specialize in best. So people always see, I'm that person in the room that's saying, are you sure we want to do that? Can we do it differently? Is it gonna make sense? And that's what we're here for. So we can use Teams as an LMS to distribute handouts like I showed before, documents, course materials, videos. And like I said, you don't have to use Teams. That's just the main focus of this presentation, because we're finding a lot of organizations don't have anything, and you already own this. So there's no additional cost to you. It's there for you to use. So I'm going to show you how to use it. We're also used to teaching face-to-face, but we have to think about that and say, I can't just kill somebody slowly. So we have to stop doing online recorded PowerPoints, narrated lectures, and just over and over and over. It's not fun. Nobody likes it, and you're killing people slowly. So what are some things we can do? We can create engaging places where people can publish their work. It's really not that hard to do, but also we want to make sure that we're aware of people's accessibility needs. One of the things you can do with Teams now is turn on closed captioning. We can actually use transcripts for stream if we're recording the conversation, so our students can go look back and see what's happening. We can create centralized places within our classroom. And this is kind of happens already by default, but it's up to the faculty member to actually make sure that they're engaging their students and using it. When you create a team, a generals tab is created, and this is a great place for you to post information and have those conversations with your students. So the generals tab, like I said, is going to be that place. Some cool things is, if you want, you can actually lock that down so only the instructor can post to it or start a new thread, and the students can respond, or they can't respond at all. So how interactive do you want to be with your students is going to be up to you. Another best practice to go over is when you're creating a team, I'll show you the difference between like a Teams and what a channel is, but just kind of put this little tickler, write this down for yourself. It is best practice, or at least we recommend doing it, that you start a new channel for either each week or each topic, depending on how you cover material. To also want to touch my face, but I'm trying not to. So we want to make sure, like I said, this is going to be my public service announcement. Don't touch your face and wash your hands. If you can't wash your hands, use your hand sanitizer. So that's going to be a best practice to create a new channel for each topic you cover. And I'll, like I said, I'll go into that a little more later on. One of the things we can't forget about, though, is student-to-student communication. This is a huge thing. It happens in many informal ways all the time. How often are you teaching in the classroom and you see a student look over to another student and say, hey, I didn't understand that. Did you, or can you help me out with that? We need to create spaces where students can still work together so they can help each other learn. This is crucial to make sure that your students are set up for success, and it helps with student retention. So how do we do that? Well, one of the things you can do is create a discussions channel within Teams, or in your LMS, create a discussion board. This allows students to post their questions and other students to respond. And like I said before, if somebody's thinking it, many people are thinking it. It just takes a space and a person to start a conversation. So provide that space. We can create virtual breakout rooms. This is super cool. I highly recommend this. So if you're doing group projects, or if you want to do a breakout, what you can do is you can create channels where students can break out into different groups like they would before, and they can have those conversations. If you're in higher ed, you can create virtual conference rooms, basically. So you create, A, B, and C virtual rooms where students can come together and they can use what's called Meet Now. So if they want to have an ad hoc meeting, they can go ahead, and a few of them can go ahead and get together, use the Meet Now function, and it creates a mini conference bridge where they can have conversations like this. They can share their screen, they can use the camera, the microphone. That's super cool. If you're in K through 12, using the Meet Now function isn't exactly recommended, I would say, because we don't have visibility. There's just, unfortunately, the teacher doesn't have 4 of them to monitor each of the video chats, but a teacher does have the bandwidth to monitor the conversations. So Meet Now isn't really recommended if you're using if you're in a K-12 scenario, but that's something that's going to be up to your organization to decide. Learning methodologies. All right, this is where I bore you guys for a second, and we're going to talk about different ways to go ahead and bring your faculty, staff, students together, how they're learning, and what we're seeing, trends online. We need to start chunking lessons. If we're doing stuff online, people get bored. I know I get distracted easily sometimes, especially if it's just death by PowerPoint. So we look at things like chunking stuff. So we have face-to-face interaction with people. We do effective online scenarios where we go ahead and we do little 10-minute sessions. So here's a 10 minutes of a presentation, and then we have some interactive learning. Unfortunately, the way I did this now, it wasn't, the best. So I'm not practicing what I preach, and I apologize for that. But I promise you we're going to be doing a bunch of interactive stuff in a few minutes. So we need to break stuff into chunks. And there's a few different ways you can do that, whether that be providing ample white space. So have a chunk of reading and then some text or photographs to show what that would look like in person, or some color. Like I said, make that little rat brain go off a little bit and make those lights and flashy bells go to make ourselves excited and happy. So ample white space, but also make sure that we have photographs, colors, highlights, text, fun stuff to keep our students engaged. Entry and exit tickets are great if you're using a synchronous learning scenario. So if you have all of your students, if they're going to be joining you in your class via video or audio, from 12 to 12:45 every day, you can do exit tickets to make sure students are engaged. So you have them post to the discussion board, here's something I learned today, or here's a question I had. This helps you create a vibrant learning space where you can engage your students, and it also helps you prioritize what are my students learning and what are they not learning. Because if I can't see them, I can't read the room. So if we can create exit tickets to help you read the room virtually, that's going to help you a lot, especially in these crisis scenarios. One of the things I've been kind of playing with is that we can actually do this as well with asynchronous learning if you're doing the video check-ins. So if you're going to be posting a lecture, perhaps at the end of the lecture you have some sort of deliverable, or you ask the student a question to see if they understood what your lecture was about or what your online learning was. So you can do this asynchronously too. It's just a little different. We have to decide, is synchronous learning really going to be necessary? Or can I move to an asynchronous model? Think about this for a second. Disruptions that are major enough to force schools to close and our students' lives to change can also have a significant impact for our students that may not that may have affected their scheduled availability. They may not be able to come to school at a certain time because their parent is either watching them or they have to go to grandma's house and grandma might not have internet, so they can't join your class. So we have to make sure that we're providing a learning scenario where all of your students can work together, and we have to make it accessible for those who can't join in this moment if we're moving to a synchronous learning scenario. And this can be addressed one by one. It's up to your school to decide how you want to do it and what state ed is telling you, or your local federal government. It really depends on those guidelines that you're given as well. So it's up to you. You can do it both ways, but just be aware that we can't assume that everybody's going to have the availability. One of the great things you can do is consider recording your lectures. It's super easy. We're actually recording this meeting now, and it was the click of a button, and it's going to publish it to our stream, which is a place where we can all access content within my organization. So think about recording your lectures or your classes and publishing that online, especially so the students can go ahead and read it later. They may have missed something within a class, so this allows them to go ahead and, hey, I remember us talking about this, but I don't remember, and they could rewatch that part of class. It also allows you to publish it for students. Now, if your organization doesn't allow you to record these classes, or you don't feel comfortable recording yourself, look at things like YouTube for videos. You can find many discussions if you're uncomfortable recording yourself, and you can post those within Teams as well. So another cool thing I really like is virtual office hours. So, traditionally in higher ed or even after school in K through 12, students are to know that you're always available from 2:15 to 3:45 or whatever that time may be. So within your class, individually as an instructor, you should decide, here are going to be my office hours when my students are going to be available, so I can have those one-to-one appointments, or we can bring everybody together so I can just have an open chat room, like I said before, where we could have, maybe breakout room number 1. From 2 to 2:45, I'm going to be on there with the video chat, and students can come and go as they please, and we can have group discussions as well. That's a cool way that you can bring people together. Just some things to touch on. We look at all the stuff that Microsoft Teams threw out to us in 2019. This list is huge. It's not really meant to be read. I highlighted some stuff in red, but this is just to show you how quickly this technology is changing and how much we're investing within it. So these are some of the amazing features that are coming together. So we look at like a read-only space for Teams, so your teacher can publish handouts and information to your students where they can't go ahead and write over that. Private channels, this is great if you have a team and you don't want to set up a new team, but you want to have a private space for people to work together without other people in the team seeing it. I'll show you an example of that in a few minutes. Meet Now, this is that great feature within a team where you can bring people together without having to schedule a meeting. With a single click of a button, it's about 2 clicks to start a Meet Now. Live events, this is super cool. And then live captions. So if you actually go into Teams right now, you can turn on live captions, and it actually does a really good job as to showing you what we're saying. That's going to be on the bottom of Teams if you want to try that out. In that little bottom bar, it'll say start live captions or turn on live captions. E-discovery, this is really important for your online learning and for organizations who have retention policies. So you guys can do advanced e-discovery through Teams information as well. So whether that be chats that were sent, information that was posted, even if it was deleted, that stuff is still retained. And that's going to be set up through your organization's retention policies. And then data loss prevention can actually be enabled for chat messages as well. And we can actually integrate third-party apps within Teams. There's a lot of cool stuff. So online learnings and meetings, if we look at what we're doing now, we're actually having a Teams meeting. So we can have up to 250 people work together, and we can have audio and video for both participants. We can have that meeting recording like we're going to do now, and it's going to post it to my organization's stream. Once that's posted, we'll have a transcription of everything that happened within this meeting and all this text that was shared. We can share chats, share files, and even react to messages within meetings. And I can also have a note section. Live events is really great. So if you have a board meeting coming up or you need to have information sent out to a larger audience, you can do live events. And this is great for up to 10,000 people. You can have 10,000 people in there, audio and video from presenters. So we can't have the people in the audience share their video or audio, but we can have a more cohesive, nicer, you'll actually see up on the screen here. So you have a presenter, and then you have people who are managing the meeting. And so you have the moderator who is going through, and they're queuing things up, reading the questions, It's really fun, actually. I highly recommend it if you're doing anything more than 250 people. Anything less than 250, Teams meetings are really great because you can have a dial-in number, as well as you can have more conversational-based meetings, really, is what I'm trying to get to. So it's cool. You also get attendance reports and engagement reports from this, question and answer sections. So it's up to you guys to decide what you want to use. You can use live events for 15 people if you want. Totally up to you guys. So I've shown you this cool technology, but how do we actually get to it? Um, Microsoft has finally gone platform agnostic. So we look at things, you can get the Teams through a desktop app, through a tablet. I use it on my iPad all the time. Any web browser, pretty much it's supported through now. Mac devices, iPhones, and Android devices. There really isn't a way not to get to Teams at this point. It's out there and it's ready. If we're going to deploy this, we really want to make sure we cover best practices. There's so many permissions policies that we can put in place that allow you to control the end user experience. So one of the things we want to look at is chat messaging. So best practice for K through 12 organizations is to disable chat messaging so that students do not have access to one-to-one messaging between each other. Unfortunately, bullying is a thing that we face, and some of the ways to curb that are through Teams policies. So we can control meeting policies, messaging policies, live events. What apps can we load into our tenant? What apps are we going to block? How do we set that up? Do I want to pin them? If you're using Teams, you can actually use it as a phone system too. So we can do caller IDs, calling, and then there's a bunch of Teams policies as well. So these are some of the things you want to look at. Another cool thing is if we're looking at school data sync, you'll actually see that we can automatically lock teams. So you can set this up for your organization, but if your teacher doesn't want to use it, your students don't have access to it. If you're interested in going through Teams policies more, I'll have some links posted afterwards. We're going to send a follow-up email, and I'm going to have a bunch of resources available to you, as well as reach out to myself or my team, because we can walk through these policies with you and make sure you're up to best practice. So one of the things we look at is who can control teams. Many organizations are afraid of letting people control teams, and that's totally understandable. So we want to make sure we think about who can control teams and what it looks like. So we'll see on the left here that there's a button that says join team or create a team. So it's that little button right there. This is best practice for higher ed organizations, not K through 12. If we're going to do a K through 12 scenario, it says bad, but that's actually not true. This slide deck was actually designed for higher ed, but the slide specifically that you're seeing now was designed for higher ed. We recommend in higher ed that you allow everybody to create a team so students can work together, but we don't want in K through 12 students to create teams because we all know what could happen if you give students a private space where they can make their own names and everything else. So highly recommend if you're in K through 12, you should be disabling Teams creation. And this can be done through the ability to create Office 365 groups. Because if we look at what a team is, it's actually kind of an onion. We peel it back about 2 layers and we'll find an Office 365 group, an Exchange Online shared mailbox, and a SharePoint site collection. So all of that is created through an Office 365 group, which handles the permissions. So if we lock down who can create Office 365 groups, we lock down who can create teams. Now we talk about creating teams. I'm sure nobody here on this call wants to be going through and making 400 or 500 teams or however many that may be for each class within your organization. So we use a really cool tool from Microsoft to use called School Data Sync. It is probably one of the coolest applications I've ever used as far as automation is concerned, because we can actually tie into your student information system. We can pull the information, whether it be through an API or a CSV file, and we can have it go ahead and create Microsoft Teams. And that'll make the teacher the owner of the team and the students team members. It sets up a class notebook where your students can take all of their notes for their class. Your teacher can give out handouts. And it also enables your organization to start looking at things like third-party app single sign-on. So if you guys are using G Suite, you can actually have your students log in with their Active Directory accounts. This gives you a single pane of glass, and it also lets you look at things like password self-service. We know most of our organizations and the IT department spend an unreasonable amount of time on password resets. If we can put that back into the hands of the end user, we can free up a lot of IT time. So we can use things like School Data Sync to start setting all of this up on the back end automatically. So here's kind of a little infographic as to what it looks like. So we have our student information system, which holds our class rosters, our students, our teachers, and the schools. We take all of that, we grab it via the Graph API or a CSV file. So it's about 6 files you would have to export. They're actually really easy, I promise you that. We grab that and then we sync it over with the school data sync tool, and that writes to Active Directory in Office 365. So Azure Active Directory to be more specifically. And then it creates the team, it creates the OneNote, it puts the students together and their devices into Microsoft Intune groups for education. And then it can also put the students together in for third-party single sign-on apps. So one of the things I talked about before is organizations are kind of afraid to turn this on because they don't want to create the teams for everyone and then have that available to the students if the teacher isn't going to use it. Well, lucky you. Microsoft actually came out with the newer version of School Data Sync that everybody has now, as to where by default, when you run School Data Sync, it does create the teams on the back end in the Office 365 groups, but it actually locks the team, so it doesn't show up for the student until the teacher's ready to go. So this gives the teacher a chance, especially in times like this. They can set their classroom up, they can get those channels going, they can get their homepage ready, put their assignments in. And once they're ready to go live with their students, they click that little activate button on the top right here, and then they'll get this pop-up screen. They'll say, hey, are you sure you want to do this? And it will open it up. So another cool thing you can do is look at things like Windows Virtual Desktop. So if you have resources on premises like computer labs for CAD or for Photoshop or for video production, we're finding a lot of schools have these labs, and now it's the end of the semester and the students are trying to get their final projects done. But at home, they may not have an intense graphics card heavy machine. They may have a Chromebook. Well, we use things like Windows Virtual Desktop to publish these applications in a Windows 10 desktop. Microsoft built this maybe a year and a half ago. It's so cool. I got to see it when it was preview and now it's finally GA, and I'm super excited to show it to people because its functionality is crazy, how well it works. We can actually put graphics cards within these virtual machines. Microsoft has a whole array of machines that you can purchase from. This not only scales automatically, but which that right there helps make it cost effective. Because this is based on Azure, it is based on a consumption amount. So if you have an Azure commit, that's super cool. You can also do pay as you go. But we look at this, so as we bring more people onto this, we have more machines spun up. So you pay by machine, not by user. Well, you kind of end up paying by user with the way that we would set it up. So you're not paying a hard cost all the time as with traditional VDI environments where you have to buy all this technology and you're just sitting on it. We have Microsoft sit on it. They're always putting new technology and you don't have to worry about heating it or cooling it or maintaining it. And they handle most of the infrastructure for you. And it's super accessible. So we look at devices as to how you can get to it. You can get to it through the Windows 10 remote desktop client, a Mac OS X desktop client, iOS apps. It's super easy. I actually use it on my iPad all the time. I have my iPad with a keyboard, and that looks just like a Windows 10 desktop when I use this. I almost can't even tell that I'm using an iPad. It's kind of crazy. Don't tell Apple. A Chromebook. So if you have Chromebooks within your organization, you can still use this for a Windows 10 device, and it feels comfortable and you don't even realize that you're using a Chromebook at that point because all of the processing is done on the Azure side of things, and we're just publishing that desktop. So it's kind of like streaming Netflix basically. And then we look at what Linux devices can have it. And a really cool feature is that it can actually be accessed from any device that has an HTML5 web browser like Chrome or Edge. So you don't actually have to download stuff. So let's take a look. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to open Teams. And you'll actually see here, this is what the team is going to look like for an educator. So I'm logged in as a teacher, and today I'm going to be Kara. And Kara is going to go ahead, and we'll see on the left here. Let me give me 1 second, guys. I just want to show you guys. This is what the team's interface looks like. So we've got our teams on this space. It's just this is our main interface, and then we're going to go ahead and we're going to look at what I like to call, or Microsoft truly likes to call, this is our me space. All of this information right here is going to be personalized to my experience. And then we look at what's called the app bar. And this right here, this is the app bar. So this is going to be all the apps within Teams. This is where you bring it all together. And this is going to show you your notifications, chats, Teams, assignments, calendar. If you're using the phone system, this is where you could take calls or make calls, your files section, and you can actually load in third-party or custom apps now. So it's super cool. We've done some fun stuff for other organizations. This box right here, we like to call the left rail. And this reflects basically whatever you choose on this app bar. So whether I go into chats, you'll see that my left rail is going to change. If I go to assignments, my left rail is going to change. If I go to activity, my left rail changes. So it's based on whatever app you tell Teams you want to look at. And then this is called the canvas. So this section right here is our canvas. This is ever changing, and it's drawing based on what I tell my left rail I want to look at. So if I choose chat and then I tell my left rail that I want to look at this, it's actually going to draw on the canvas whatever we're telling it to. And then on the top here, we'll actually see this is actually going to be our tabs. So depending on what we're in, so let's take a quick look at Teams. You'll see that we can have all of these different tabs, and there's some really cool functionality we can do with that. And then this is the command box. This isn't just a search box. I want to make that clear for everyone. Everybody's so used to just calling it the search box, but it is a command bar because you can actually do things with it. So we look at things, if you type in @ you can mention somebody with a praise. We can look at things like the news or the weather, or do a YouTube search right from within this. And then there's also / commands. So we can check the activity of someone. I can send a message to someone. I can do many things right from within that bar. Alrighty, so now we're gonna go ahead and I'm gonna show you just how easy it is to make a team because nobody ever believes me. So this organization is set up to allow users to create teams. So what we do is all we have to do is click, we tell we want to go into Teams, and then we click join or create a team. And then from here, you'll actually see you can join a team with a code. So when I create a team, I can send my users a code, and this allows them to type that in here and they will be added to the team. So I want to create a team. And we look at things like you can set up a class team, and this is going to be great for students and faculty members, a professional learning community, a staff community, or others great for clubs, outside organizations, activities, school groups. Within the additional documentation that I'm going to be sending to you guys, it's going to break down what each of these is going to be used for. But let's do a PLC. So this is going to be a great place for educators to work together. I'm going to name my team. So let's call this one math department. We can give it a description. So this would be, let's say, whatever school district, whatever department it is and what building they're in, or if you want to give them some more information. We look at whether we want it to be private or public. So a private team, only people who have visibility to it are going to be ones that we add. Public, anybody within your organization can join it. So if you want to create a team and say, hey, everybody, this is going to be open, feel free to join, that's when we want to use a public team. Most of the stuff we're doing is going to be private because we want to control who has access to see our stuff. All we did is we just click create. And then we want to tell it, okay, who do I want in this team? It's going to be like, all right, you created something, now let's bring some people together. Who and what is the better question. So we want to bring people together. A team is a collection of users or people working to achieve a greater good or purpose. So if this is the math department, perhaps I want people from the math team. So if I'm Kara, maybe I want to find Al Fredrickson, or I want to add Patty. So let's add him, and let's add Grady in, and let's look for Robin. So these are some people that I want to work together. Perhaps they're teachers with my organization and I want to have a place for us to collaborate, communicate, share ideas, or even just have meetings. I just created a team for that. Add it. They're going to actually get an invite in their email saying, hey, you've been added to this team. Now you created it, but you don't have to manage it, which is super convenient. So I can say, maybe I want Robin to actually be an owner of this as well. So this will give her additional permissions to help manage that team with you or for you. and then we close it out. And now I've created a team, and we'll see here, we have the math department. It just gives it its own little custom logo, and this can be customized. We'll see that we're in the generals channel. So with each team that you create, the team is the collection of people working to achieve a greater good or purpose, you get channels, and channels are places for threaded topical conversations. So as you'll see here, we've got, the Pineview school staff, and then we've got a generals tab, announcements for the staff members. This might be the English department across the entire school, the history department across the entire district, some school improvement planning. This is a great place to bring people together. And like I said, these are threaded topical conversations. So that was super easy to create a team. Now let's look at some of the channels and some of the things we can do with the channels. So you'll see this one has a lot of channels, and it can be a little distracting, and I'm not really sure if I like it. Maybe I'm part of this entire staff team for the entire district, but I'm not in the English department, so I really don't care to see any of that. I can actually hide that so I don't have to see it. And that's going to make it easy so I can start condensing a lot of this so I can see more of the information that's pertinent to me. I can actually go ahead, perhaps I am part of another department. So if I'm also teaching math and I want to follow it, I can follow that channel. I can also go ahead, and that would be done through channel notifications. And so this is going to send you notifications anytime a new post is created. We have it off, but do I want to just show it in my feed, or do I want to get banner notifications as well? And we'll show you guys what that looks like in a minute. And then if I'm going to follow it, if somebody mentions me within a channel, what do I want it to do? Do I want it to just show up in my feed and let you know, hey, somebody mentioned you, or do I want to get a banner notification as well, a little pop-up? I'm a fan of both. I like to keep track of what's going on. If somebody's mentioning me, it usually means that it's important and I need to take a look at it. Alrighty. Let's talk about app mentions. It's super cool. It's really fun. I like it a lot. It's very Facebooky. I'm a millennial. We like that instant gratification. I like to call people out. App mentions are a great thing to do, and don't have to target this down to just millennials. Any organization can use it because it's a great way to call people's attention that you're talking about them in a conversation. There may be a lot of stuff going on, and if you don't app mention somebody within a conversation that you're having, they may not see it, and you can't hold them accountable for things that you expect of them. So app mentions, grab people's attention and let them know, hey, I'm talking about this person. Especially within large groups, if you look at a district-wide team that you may be having, and there could be 500 or 600 people in there. If I just say Chris, I may not know if that's Chris Watson, Chris Johnson, Chris Stevens. So we want to make sure we call people out. So I could mention Chris Watson, and it would let me know, oh, hey, I was called out. I need to take a look at something. And it's going to pop it up into my activities section. So I'm actually going to mention Kara from another page, and we'll see what happens. Alrighty, watch how you'll see she's actually going to get a notification. So she was mentioned. We'll see the whole thing lights up. What you can't see is on my main screen, I actually got a little pop-up saying that somebody mentioned me, and then it told me where it was specifically. So within my activity section, you'll see that the screen lights up like a slot machine, which is my favorite. Like I said, really get that rep brain going. So we go ahead, we look in our activity section and our feed. This is very similar to on Facebook, where it shows you a lot of the things that are going on within your organization that may pertain to you and tangentially. So it lets you know, oh, hey, you were mentioned here, and I can get to it by clicking on it, and you'll see that it just brings me right into the section. And it says that Adele posted on a channel, and it said, hey, I have a question. I don't understand the homework. And from here, you could respond and say, what is your question? And we can have these threaded conversations very similar to Facebook or Twitter posts. One of the things that I can't stress enough is if you're responding to somebody's post, you need to make sure you click this reply button. This is going to keep these conversations together in this threaded format. If I was on Facebook and I was responding to somebody's Facebook post, I'm not going to make a new Facebook post myself. I'm going to comment on it, and clicking this reply button chunks that together just like we would on there. So we want to make sure we chunk things together and we train our end users properly to click reply. We don't want to start a whole new thread. And sometimes this happens by accident, and that's okay, but we want to try to mitigate that as much as possible, and that's done through proper end user training. We can actually see here, we can go into the team, and that lit up with an @ symbol as well, and same section. So you'll see it actually through the activity took me right into that team. So single one workflow, one click. We try to, 2 clicks at max is really what we're going for here. Have I lost anybody so far? I hope it's all clear as mud. Okay. Let's take it. We just looked at the activity bar, and I showed you guys some of the stuff you can do. With the activity bar, you have 2 options. You can do your feed or your my activity. Your my activity is going to be where stuff that you did posted, and some of the things that were shown that you may have done that may have gotten interactions. So I usually keep mine on feed just because it gives me more information about my organization and context around what's happening. Conversations. So I'm a huge fan of this little bar right here, my favorite. A lot of times people may be saying stuff and you don't need to respond back to it. If I'm just letting people know about things, I don't need to go ahead and have people respond back saying yes, okay, whatever. But we've created this nonverbal communication bar right here where people can post stuff and you can say, okay. A big thing that we see a lot is that a teacher will post something and the students will like it to let the teacher know that they saw it. You can also, love something, laugh at something. You could be surprised, you could be sad, and you can be angry. Angry is kind of fun, but we don't really see it used often. But that's just some of the stuff that you can do. Some other fun stuff you can do is we can actually go ahead. I'm just going to reply to this to show you guys. We can use GIFs. If you ask any of my coworkers, they will all tell you that I communicate in GIF, basically hieroglyphics at this point. But and then you can actually go ahead and type some text around that as well. And if your organization is uncomfortable using this or you don't want to make it available, do know that Microsoft monitors this content, so you can decide what level of content you want to show them. So do we want to make it heavily regulated, lightly moderated, or moderately moderated? So you can pick what level you want to allow to your organization, or we can just turn it off altogether. So if you don't want people using GIFs for whatever reason that may be, because you're a stickler and you're boring and you want to make things sad for your students, then go ahead and turn it off. But if you want to engage your students and make it fun and exciting and keep people moving forward, especially in times like this, leave it on. It's really not that bad. Just make sure you set the settings accordingly. And this can even be controlled on a class-by-class basis too. So it's going to be up to the person and the teacher or the organization. We really give you a lot of flexibility as to who can control it. The files section. This is super cool. So if we look at the files over here, this is going to be, okay, these are my Microsoft Teams files, and this is going to bring all of your files together from the different teams that you're a part of. And it also shows you your OneDrive. So if you're using Teams, you should be using OneDrive, and this is going to show you all of your personal files that you save in OneDrive. A cool thing you can now do with OneDrive is what's called known folder redirection. So we look at things with known folder redirection. We can actually turn on it to sync up your My Documents folder, your desktop, and your pictures. So this is super cool, especially if you have teachers who traditionally save stuff to their desktop and then now can't get to it. If we turn on known folder redirection, it actually syncs their desktop to their OneDrive folder, and they have access to all of their content remotely, real time. So if I make changes on my desktop, or if I make changes on my make changes either in my OneDrive online or make changes on my desktop, we can go ahead and we can get that from anywhere we are, and it's always going to be the most up-to-date real live copy. So we'll see here, these are all of the files that I have within Teams. So it's going to pull it together. So here's my physical sciences files. These are going to be my health files. And then we've also got algebra. So if I'm a part of a team and there's files in it, I can see it through here. I can also access my OneDrive from here. So one of the cool things you can do is collaborate on documents together. This is one of my favorite features, and we use it a lot within our organization, where we're all used to the old way of doing things, where we would attach a Word document to an email, put 25 people in a thread, and somebody would download it, make their changes, and send it out to the thread. Well, at that same time, there was 2 other people who were making their changes to that document. They respond, and now we've got 5 different dead, disparate copies of our document. Nobody knows what's current, and everybody's scratching their head. If we load things into Teams, we can all work on the same document at the same time. We can see the changes that are happening, which is super convenient. So let me open a file that we can see from both our student and our teacher account. And I'm just going to go into a class for this, actually, because it's a little easier to narrow that down. So we'll see within Teams, we didn't have to go to another application. We're actually opening an Excel document. It's super cool. So you don't even have to go and change what you're working on. We can actually open it right from within online. So we can stay in the same tool. We all know transition time is a huge change within schools. So we have to look at, how can we mitigate our transition time and make sure students are able to access their content easily and effectively. So we'll see here, there can actually be multiple people in a document working on it at the same time. And if I make a change, we should see some real-time changes. So we'll see that we've got Adele here. It actually shows you what cell they're in. So as we move around, you'll see that I'm moving around. I can see where other people are working. And if I make a change on Adele, so if Adele, who is my student account, she makes a change, you'll actually see in real time, it'll show up on the other person's account as well. So we can have multiple people working on the same document. So in a spreadsheet, it's going to be cell by cell. On a Word document, we're actually doing paragraph by paragraph. On a slide, it's paragraph by paragraph as well. We're all working together at the same time. We can actually have conversations about what's happening. So this is cool. We can kind of start talking about the document we're working on. Maybe we want to have a video chat and work on this document together. So we can have our conversation, work on the same Word document, talk about what's happening, mention people like we talked before. It's super convenient and easy and really helps change the way we're doing things. So some other stuff that you can do, we'll talk about chats for a second. Some fun stuff is going to be starting group chats. So if you have people who may not be in a team together and you want to have a chat, we can actually go ahead and start a group chat. So we're going to go ahead and start typing in names. So let's say I want to talk to Adele and I need to talk to Grady. I can go ahead and now we have a group conversation. Ad hoc, we didn't have to create a team. And you'll see this is actually going to allow everybody to come together. Whomever was in that conversation just got a notification. So if we look, we'll see this is our student. She actually has a little bubble there. If she has the app downloaded on her phone or on her computer, she'll get a little pop-up as well. And we can actually do cool things like rename it. So, this is our A team, we're super excited to work together, whatever it may be. Now we have a little more context around who may be in it. We can see, these are the people in it. If you are added to a team and you don't want to be a part of it, all you have to do is leave. If you think that maybe you need to have some more people in it, all you have to do is click add people, and we can keep adding more people. So let's say I want to go ahead and add George, because now George needs to be part of this conversation. We can add him in and we decide, all right, do I want to include the chat history or not? Maybe I want to include only the past 2 days. It's going to be pertinent information to him. He doesn't need to see stuff that we talked about a month ago. We can tell it, okay, maybe I want to have only one day, or I want to include all of the chat history. Be aware, this actually happened to a couple organizations that I worked with. When you're doing this, maybe take a look back at what you said. Make sure you didn't call anybody out, because we've actually seen it where people called other people out and later on they got added to the chat and they had visibility into all of that. So it wasn't exactly the prettiest thing to ever happen. So maybe I want to add George, and it's totally cool if I add in all of the time. Now we'll see we have all 4 people in this conversation and everybody has access to that threaded conversation. Meetings, super cool. I'm a huge fan of meetings, and we have meetings through the calendar tab. This is linked to an Exchange online calendar, and that's what it pulls in. So it's actually pulling in the same calendar that would be in your Outlook. So there's no 2 separate calendars. We don't have to try to manage that. It all ties together pretty easily. But as a heads up, this does still require Exchange Online. So we want to take a look at that and understand what our organization is using and how can you leverage it. If you don't have Exchange Online, you can still kind of access some functions of Teams. It's just going to look a little different, and we could take that on a case-by-case basis. So we would look at your organization and understand the best path to go forward for you. So you can look now. Do I want to have a meeting now, or do I want to schedule a meeting? So if I want to schedule a meeting, it's super easy. All I do is I click new meeting. I want to give it a title. So this is going to be, maybe this is our weekly recap meeting. Who do I want it to be in it? So maybe I want George. Maybe I need Brock. And let's add in Henry. So this is going to be all of our times. We can see, what date do I need to have it on? Maybe I need to have it on the 20th, and it's going to be our end of day meeting. And because we all know you should always have an end of day meeting from 4:30 to 5. And do I want this to repeat? So maybe I want to have this every Friday. So weekly, we're going to have this meeting on Friday from 4:30 to 5. Make sure we keep people until the last minute. We can add it to a channel, which is super cool. So if we want to kind of bring that context together, and maybe all of these people are going to be within our staff development channel, we can actually throw that right in there. Or if, let's say every week we have our emergency response meeting, we can throw that into there. And that will chunk all of that together and invite all of those members. And we can give it a location. Is it going to be on Teams, or is it going to be in 536 Main Street, conference room C? And then we can add some context to that as well. And we send that out, and all of those people got an invite in their calendar. So an Exchange message came up in their Outlook, and it said, hey, you have a meeting invite. Do you want to accept it? It shows up in their calendar. It'll show up in their Teams calendar. And all they have to do is click on it to join the meeting. Super easy, super convenient, really fun. Meet Now is super cool. I'm a fan of it for a few different reasons. We don't always need to have a scheduled meeting, especially if we're working in a team and I'm having a conversation with people and we're chatting and we're going through, and then all of a sudden we decide, guys, it might be easier if we just quickly hop on a call. All I have to do is click this Meet Now button, and we'll actually see, all right, maybe I want to turn my camera on. This environment doesn't have a camera. Just the way that I'm using it, but so we could turn the camera on, I could schedule it for later, or maybe I want to call this something. So if we're having a meeting and let's say we're talking about our volunteer opportunity, we're having this long thread and we decide, all right, we really got to nail out some of the details, and a conversation is going to be easier had over the phone. And then all we do is we click Meet Now, and it's actually going to go ahead and start a meeting. And people who are within that tab are going to get a little notification. Hey, this meeting is going ahead and it's starting. Do you want to join? You can actually, as you started the meeting, you can click and you can call people. So in this, we've got Grady. Do I want to ask him to join? He'll actually get a little notification. If I click ask to join, he's going to get a pop-up basically like a phone call saying, hey, you've been asked to join this meeting. In Adele, she's part of this team as well. Just to show you guys what it looks like, it's going to show up right here saying that a meeting has started, and all she has to do is click join, and it'll give her a little ticker counter saying, hey, this meeting's been going on for this long. Just to give you a little context, let's ask her to join and see if we can get the right pop-up. So we'll see here, right in this bottom section, it's actually calling her. What you can't hear is that my audio is actually ringing. I can hear it in my ear. And so she could just click join, and now they're in a meeting together. So we see the two of them are actually in a meeting and other people as well. So that's a great way to bring people together. So we're going to hang up on that. You can also record meetings, super easy. So we record the meeting just like we're doing now. It lets everybody know. They get a little pop-up saying, hey, the meeting's being recorded. From there, she can share her screen. If let's say we wanted to share a screen, we can share just windows within a screen. This is super cool if you've got multiple stuff going on and you only have one screen and you only want to share one application. Maybe I just want to share this PowerPoint. I can just tell it I want to share just this app. And when other stuff comes up on my screen, people aren't going to see it. So I don't have to worry about that too much. You can have a whiteboard. This is super fun, especially trying to bring people together who may not be in the same room. We like to do a lot of whiteboarding to work through topics. So we create a virtual whiteboard where you can actually use the stylus on your computer, whether that be your mouse, trackpad, or if you're fortunate enough to have a touch screen that has a stylus input, you can use that as well. And then we can have our within a conversation, you can go ahead and have your chats, you can share files. There's a lot of cool stuff. And this is what I was talking about before, turning on live closed captioning. That if you turn that on, it will put a little box right here and it will translate everything you're saying into text. Show devices settings. This is just something you want to remember. If you're having audio issues, you want to just click on audio devices and make sure that it's pulling up your device. We're gonna go ahead and we're actually gonna cancel this. So we're gonna stop recording. Yep. And it just let us know, hey, it's gonna be published in stream in a little bit. You can come take a look at it. It lets everybody know, hey, this happened. And when they're done, they can go ahead and view the meeting in stream if they missed the meeting. So some of the cool stuff we can do is actually customize our channels and add apps into them. So let's take a look. This is my emergency response channel. This is how I'm going to show you how we can tie together response in teams. There's a lot of cool stuff you can do. So let's look at one of the things we can do, which is going to be to share files. Before I talked about how we can lock channels down, let's say I have an emergency response team that has people from each of our nurses' offices, different administration within the school, from the district office, as well as people from maintenance and building and grounds. We can have them all come together so we can have a cohesive emergency response plan. You know, we're all used to printing that out and sharing it, and there's a binder everywhere. Everybody's trained on the plan and we run through it. But if we can take that and put it digitally, one of the cool things we can do is for a health emergency, we can have a place, and you'll see this is locked down, this little icon here. So people who are part of this channel or this team, they actually won't see that unless they've been it's inclusive, so or it's mutually exclusive, what I would say. So we exclude everybody and we bring people in as we need to. So we go ahead and we would just say, alrighty, maybe I need to add some more people because I get a new nurse to this, or I need to take people out. I can manage who's in the channel, and this is going to be locked down. We have this private file section here, and you'll see I've thrown in some student medical records. So this is going to be a place if there is an emergency, and we have some special needs students within our school who may require additional health information. In the event of an emergency, we want to have easy access to that. They may have needs that we may not know about, or emergency response team should be aware of. So this is going to be a place where you could do that. And so the school nurses can come together along with certain administrators who would normally have access to that information, and we could put that together. We look at like COVID-19. This is a channel where we can have conversations about what's happening, share files about it. We can actually go ahead and load in websites as well. So you'll see here, we've got a link to the CDC website, and that's actually going to draw that web page right from within Teams. So we can see some information about it. What are some things that are happening? How can you be prepared? This just draws that together. And we've also linked it to the World Health Organization website. Let's say you have an active shooter response plan. You can have this in here, and this can be the place where you guys discuss your strategy around that. Have the files in here for any information you may need to share in the event that that happens. Same for a flyer, a flood. You can make this however you want and really break it down to your organization. There's so much you can do. This general channel is going to be that place for those notifications or for the conversations you may want to have. But definitely, if you're going to have a conversation around a certain topic, you want to make sure that you have that within that topic. You'll actually see here we have the post section. This is a little notebook. Take action is actually pretty cool. So I just want to call that out. This is actually a place where we're using Power Automate. We're surfacing that to the team. So people who are in this team have access to run these automation scripts. And this is actually stuff that we've built out. So like a COVID emergency response plan. By clicking play, we can actually run this playbook and have it do stuff for us. So I'll actually show that off in about 30 seconds. I just want to call this out, this emergency response plan. So this is actually a planner within Teams, and you'll see across here, we've created all of these different buckets. So this may be what people are responsible for in the event of an emergency and all of the stuff they have to do. So we can actually use our action plans and assign assignments to that. So you'll saw all the buckets were empty. Let's say we need to activate our emergency response plan. All we do is we click run. It's going to bring up and say, all right, give me 1 second. It's going to make sure all the connectors are in place. And now it's asking us, this plan is what we're going to do in the event that we need to close school for an outbreak. It said, are you sure you want to close school? Okay, yes, I'm sure I want to close school. And then we can say, alrighty, when do you think school is going to reopen? Let's say we're going to reopen it on 4/13. And we can make this many different dialog boxes, other different information. Just for all intents and purposes, this is just an easy thing I threw in there. We click run flow, and the flow started. So this is actually going to go ahead and it's doing a bunch of stuff in the background. We can actually take a look at what it's doing now. I'll open it up and show you guys. So we'll see. This is our flow. It's currently running. So we triggered a flow. Let me grab a quick screenshot for you guys. Oh, it went away. Sorry, guys. I was hoping to get that faster. Anywho, I got a little pop-up on my browser here saying that I was sent a card. You'll actually see that my Teams is flashing, letting me know that I have a message. So we actually, now we know that this actually, it's already done. We just initialized some variables. We're actually seeing the code behind what happened. We checked to make sure that it was true and that we wanted to run it. We gave it some information. You'll see that we had to create a task. It posted messages to Teams. It sent people direct messages. It actually sent emails. And then we went through and we sent other notifications. So we look at some of the stuff that would happen. After I ran this flow, you'll actually see that we had some stuff happen. So you'll see it automatically, for me, posted a message saying that the response plan was activated. We'll look in this chat section. Flow sent me a message saying, hey, here's the subject of the message, letting you know this has been canceled. So we pulled information. So this one actually sent it to all staff members within the organization. And so you can give it different variables to do. So we had it send us a message. Within a team, it also posted. So if we go to the general channel, it lets people know that, hey, this was canceled. Actually, it's not there. I had to put it somewhere else. I just don't remember where I put it, guys. Sorry. So we had it break out and do stuff. So it sent me a notification saying, hey, it was activated, school's closed. This can do the same thing for an active shooter response as well. Perhaps we need to bring stuff in, let people know what's happening, assign assignments. But in the event of an outbreak and a closure, this was a great thing to do. We actually are going to take a look back into this little planner section, and you'll see that just one of the examples, I had to create a task for someone. So it assigned Ken at the central office. He is responsible to send communication to parents. Maybe we don't have an automated connector set up yet, and so there is manual intervention. We can have it do most of this work for us automatically through APIs and different web apps that we can tie into this. But if there's manual processes that need to be done, we can track this all through Planner. So maybe Ken has to do something, and he can set it so we can look at the progress of it. Has he started it? Is he done with it? We could put checklist items in here, notes in. Maybe he has a comment. So, his comment can be, hey, I'm working on it and I'm experiencing issues with it. That can all be done right from here. So everybody who is part of this team, they may not be together, but they can real time see what's happening and keep track and make sure that people are being held accountable for what they have to do. So the different medical staff, central office, and I've broken these buckets out based on people's roles and responsibilities, but your organization can do this however you'd like. So in the event of an outbreak or in the event something happens, we can bring stuff together and we can go ahead and trigger something to happen. Super easy, super fun. Not fun, but I think it's fun that we can actually make this happen and create accountability for our organization. So it's definitely something worth taking a look at. And then, so you got to see how we can kind of automate a lot of the workflow processes together. I want to just touch on some of the assignments features that Teams has to use it as an LMS. So as a teacher, you'll see that here's all of the assignments that I've assigned my students. I can see who's turned what in, what that looks like. Here's my upcoming assignments. I can create assignments, whether it's a quiz or an assignment. A quiz actually ties into forms as well, so I can post questions. An assignment allows me to post material. So let's look at this 323 check-in. So you'll see, all right, here's the people I've assigned it to. Have they looked at it? So we'll see Adele looked at it, but she hasn't turned it in yet. All these people who are not turned in, they haven't looked at it. They haven't done anything with it. It's just sitting there assigned. Within there, we can go ahead. And so you give, when you create an assignment, you give it a title. You then assign instructions. So here's some instructions for the students. Let them know, hey, here's a document I attached, and there's actually a video that I attached as well. If you're using Teams, you can also use it as a grading system. So I want to assign it points, or we can even add a rubric in. So if there's a grading rubric that we want to use, you can go ahead and use that as well. So let's look at that from the student view. So I'm going to take a look at my assignments and then go ahead, physical sciences, next. And you'll see, all right, here's some stuff. I'm a little behind. I haven't done my homework yet for this. Let's take a look at this one though, because this is cool. When I talked about those daily or weekly check-ins, this is an example of one of those. So I've gone ahead and here it is. I'm the student and I'm looking at it. It's, here's the assignment name. Here's the instructions my teacher gave me. Here's some reference materials. If we actually click on that, you'll see it takes me to Stream. And from here, I actually recorded a PowerPoint presentation with myself. And this was just a little heads up. Here's my weekly check-in. I hope you all had a great weekend. Let's take a look at what we're doing. So last week, here's something we covered. We covered our Lab Report 1. Here is our monthly physical sciences presentations. And we covered chapter 5, 7, and 14. Then we look at, what are we doing this week? Here's some of the stuff we're doing. And then I've got, at the end, our fun fact. And so the fun fact is actually something that I pulled in. And if you look at the assignment, when we open, it's actually going to have a Word document. This was just something you threw together. You can use forms as well, which is super great. And then here's some information. And then the student can respond and say, Jay, as soon as they click close, it saves it. So there's no clicking save, no losing your documents. And the student clicks turn in. So I referenced materials outside of my organization or internally. So I could have attached a YouTube video here, a link to a website. I uploaded any information. So if it's a PowerPoint that they may need, or an Excel spreadsheet they need to fill out, or a Word document, I can put that there. And then they can assign it. You can assign it to them. The student can turn it in. And so we're going to go back to your team. We're going to look and we're going to go to our homework section. So here's my assignments. And we'll see, alrighty, here is that check-in. And I'm gonna see now that she turned it in. What does that look like? So I click on it, and now it's gonna open that Word document. So you look at the student and go through, and you can go one by one. So you don't even have to leave screens. You can go student by student very quickly and check their work. So you'll see this student didn't turn it in, so there's no point in me checking it. So we'll go to the next one. And we'll see they turned it in. When did they turn it in? Here's the document. There's their answer. I can give them feedback. I can also modify the document. So let's say they needed some information, or there was a Word document, or they were typing an article and they handed back in an assignment, and they needed some constructive criticism around that. I can actually mark up this document and send it back to them as well, and then I can assign them points, and I can return it to the student, and the student lets them know, hey, your assignment was returned. You can check to see how you did, and any markups the teacher may have given you. And you'll actually see here, the assignment was returned. So the student, it lets them know real time, hey, here's your assignment, good job. And then class notebook. This is so cool. What I would have given to have this back in the day. And the past is the past, and here we are now, and now we're innovating technology to help our students. So a class notebook is a place where a teacher and student can share notes. How many times have you been in a classroom, you think you have all of your copies, you printed out 24, or at least you told the machine to, and you actually have 22. You're too short, you got to run back to the copy machine. Well, and that model doesn't even work if we're teaching remote. So we look at things like Class Notebook, where I can actually load in my assignments or my information. So we've got our content library, and I've got in here a worksheets, materials, resources. And from here, we can actually give that to our students with the click of a button. So here's my worksheet. And if I want to say, all right, I'm going to go to the Class Notebook section here. This is the administrator view as a teacher, and I want to distribute this page. I then distribute it, and I say, all right, where do I want to put it? So this is only going to happen for this notebook, and it's a handout, so I want to put it in the student's handout section. I click distribute, and in the background, it's going to go ahead and start doing this. I did one last night so you guys could see what it looked like now, because sometimes this can take a few minutes. So we're going to look at reading materials. So in here, we'll actually look, and I've got this document. This was a PDF I found online, and I went and threw this into a tab for our students to look at. They can actually go ahead and highlight it, and I distributed that to all of our students' notebooks. As a teacher, you have visibility into every student's notebook within your class. You build out the notebook in the sections ahead of time, and with the click of a button, everybody has the same view. So let's look at that from the student side of things. So if I go ahead and I open my notebook for that class, so I'm going to open my class notebook for physical science. You'll actually see they get the same welcome page, and this is all built out by the teacher. So this is the default welcome page, but you'll see I'm going to open my notebook, and I'm going to go to handouts. And here is that handout that I gave out yesterday. Without having to do anything without having to do a lot of work, I just clicked 2 buttons and I gave it to all my students relatively easily. I go ahead, here's another handout that I gave out. Here's some homework assignments. If you want to assign them homework within Teams, you can do that. You can actually publish pages where your students can do markups, and then you can lock it. So perhaps you publish it out, the student could do some stuff in it, and then you lock it after a certain amount of time. You can go ahead and do that. Super easy way for you to distribute notes to your students, and they have a place where they can mark it up together. As a student, it's really cool for me to be able to go through, here's my reading assignment, and I'm reading through it, and I want to highlight something, and then I just go ahead and highlight it. If I want to mark something up, if I want to draw on the page, having a tablet, you can actually draw right on the page. When I was in college, I actually used OneNote. They didn't have Class Notebook at the time, but I took notes on my iPad, and I went through and I printed out all the slide decks from the teachers, and I would highlight information, circle stuff, draw pictures, anything that was pertinent, because that was my style, my method of teaching. With OneNote, if you are using a stylus or you're writing on the screen, it can actually read your handwriting. So you can go ahead and search your notebook based on your handwriting. So you don't have to type everything. If your students aren't comfortable typing, maybe they write better and your device supports it. That's okay too, because they can still search that. And as a teacher, you can see that as well. So Adele only has a visibility as a student into her notebook, the content library, and this is where the teacher can store materials or people as in a read-only fashion can access. And then the collaboration space is going to be where students can both read and write in this section. So perhaps there's some project notes for something here, and all the students have access to go and read and write, highlight stuff, circle stuff. Maybe they're going through and students want to make comments on something. That's something they can do in the collaboration space. If you want to give them a space to work together on a group project, collaboration space is a really great place to do that. Excuse me. And this integrates with your LMS too. So if we want to start doing grading out of OneNote, we can actually go ahead and tie OneNote into our learning management system. And if we're doing grading in here, we can actually have that published right over to our LMS. So we don't have to enter grades twice, because we all know how fun it is to have to redo duplication of tasks. Does anybody have any questions? I hope everything's going well and you understand what I'm doing. I've shown you assignments. We've talked about a lot of stuff. I wanted to leave some time at the end. We've got about half an hour so we can end early. And we've also, I know Michael Heffley's been monitoring the questions so far.
And feel free to unmute yourself. To all the participants out there, feel free to ask questions live, as well as use the chat. I know Ron Ryer from Bethel Park asked a question about disabling student video. One of the interesting things that we're aware of is it's on the roadmap. It's in, I believe it's public preview, to take that blur feature for video. So my video that you're seeing now is blurred, and to replace that with another background, kind of like when you see chroma key newscasts, especially for the weather. They take a green screen behind somebody and they replace it with another image. What we're not sure of yet is whether you can force that to be something that's set by policy or whether that's up to the end user. One of the things that we have heard horror stories about, and including from folks who are using Teams aggressively, from a cyber charter school that is using Teams, and they have webcams on their students' machines, is to be aware of what's behind the student if you don't blur it or if you don't replace that background or if you enable video at all. So just some of the considerations that I would not have thought about. Just imagine what your students would do if they could, if you give them enough rope.
One of the questions was how many features require the Teams app rather than just the web browser? 9/10 of the functionality of Teams is available through the web browser, if not 99% of it. There's some small idiosyncrasies that happen when you use a web browser as far as sharing certain content. And also depending on the web browser. So if you're up to date on your version of Chrome or Edge and you're using Teams online, you should have a pretty good experience. We haven't found much. I actually can't think of anything off the top of my head that doesn't work in Teams online, that only works in the app. I'll find some documentation and I'll post that as a follow-up for you guys as well, because that is a very pertinent question. But as far as all of the stuff your teachers and students are going to be doing, most of that work can be done right from within the web browser or the app on their phone as well.
And as a follow-up to this, we will shoot out a link to this recording as well as the other materials that Chris will make available to you as reference material. Chris, was there anything else? I'm sorry, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I'm just reading through now and I see another school is using Google Edu. One of the cool things you can do within Teams actually is, one second, I'm gonna go ahead and show this off. Across here, when I talked about adding tabs, this is actually a Google Doc that we tied into this team. So if your school is using Google, you can actually tie in Google resources to your Teams and publish it from there. So what we do is, all we do is we click on this little add button here, and every teacher, depending on how your school sets this up, has the ability to add tabs to their channel. So we can tie stuff in like Excel, Flow, Forms, if you want to ask questions, OneNote, if just like we did earlier for the class notebook, a planner like we did to keep track of things that are happening, a website. You can tie Google in through a website or an app as well. So you can surface your information right from there. I'm actually going to show you guys one cool thing in a moment, how you can actually tie custom apps in here. So in this, you can actually go ahead and you can put in more apps and you can tie them here. So whether it be a custom app that your organization writes. And so if you have a learning management software or Google Classroom and you want to throw that in, we can actually pin it on this app bar right here and surface that in Teams. So that's just something I wanted to show off, that you can still access Google materials. Windows Virtual Desktop. Would you like to know something fun? I kind of forgot to do this. I am actually presenting this entire presentation on Windows Virtual Desktop. This is not my laptop, guys. So you'll see here, I'm actually going to pull out of this for a second and show you guys that my desktop is actually here. So what you guys are now seeing is actually my desktop. These are all of my actual laptop applications now. This is my real background. This is, so we did the entire thing in Windows Virtual Desktop. So this is accessible not only through your iPad, but Chromebook, any device. And it's so cool that we can do all of this without even having to do it. Let me show you guys what the user experience looks like on an iPad really quick.
Scott, I will get to your question in just a second. I'm going to let Chris show that off. So for those of you who have messed with VDI in the past, whether it was Citrix or Microsoft Terminal Services, you probably remember just what a pain in the neck it was to set up with certificates and licensing and the various different roles that RDS required, and then authentication. It was expensive from a licensing perspective and a staff perspective to set up and to maintain. Windows Virtual Desktop, one of the great advantages is that it makes that licensing very simple. You don't have to worry about the licensing. Essentially, if you've got SA and you have an Azure subscription, whether it's pay-as-you-go or an Azure annual commit number, you can just spin up a pool of machines and they will scale automatically based on demand. What they can't do is serve as a gateway into on-premises machines. What that would assume is that you would have is a requirement to have remote desktop set up on each one of those lab machines that you've configured already, and then some way to proxy that out to the internet. So if those machines were only serving up web pages, you could use something like the Azure App Proxy to remotely reverse proxy them essentially up to the Azure cloud, and then they could be presented to the users in that application picker in Office 365. But if it's actually a desktop that is expecting an RDS client, then no, that's not something you could use Windows Virtual Desktop for. In fact, from a licensing perspective, I'm not sure it would be supported.
One of the cool things you can do with Windows Virtual Desktop is when you're standing it up, it's relatively easy to do, as well as we don't have to make multiple gold masters. We go ahead and we load one gold master, we load all of our software in there, and then we assign access to that software based on user groups. So you don't have to traditionally where we're standing up multiple environments, giving each computer their own user experience. We stand up one, we tell it, do we want to give them dedicated desktops, persistent desktops, or every time they close their desktop, it gets refreshed. And then we can give them dedicated resources or pool our resources. Pooling your resources is great because it allows you to have that multi-user experience that we're leveraging. And on the back end, we'll see we give a machine, 8 virtual CPUs, 32 gigs of RAM. And all of your users, traditionally, when we look at it, we find that they're not doing a lot, and they're maybe using 15 to 25% of the system resources or less. So we allow that to pool our resources and still have the most bang for our buck and have space for spikes within that, and we automatically scale that. What you're actually seeing here is through Teams, you can actually share finally your screen on your iPad. So this is my iPad, and now you can actually share screens right from within an iPad. I'm going to go ahead and open this client. I'm going to go ahead and I've got my username and my password is going to be something that I don't want to share with you guys.
So one thing you can do for Scott at ECC, one thing that you've already done is configure these lab machines that you've got. So essentially, you've got yourself a base image that you could then use to seed that pool of hosts up in the cloud. You can either take a gallery image that Microsoft has for you, or rather like just an OEM bare bones operating system and load apps into it. If you've already got lab machines built, you could snapshot one of those and use that as your base image. one of the other things from a security perspective that you get, which you might not think out of the gate was going to be really important, but it really is more and more so in education as people are being spearphished in record numbers in higher ed, and increasing now in K through 12. You can use the Azure Active Directory authentication mechanisms to control access to these machines. So it's not like you're spinning up our remote desktop client to get to these, although you can use our RDS, but if you're logging in with a browser, for example, you're going to be prompted for a token. If you don't have one, you're going to have to authenticate through Azure AD, which can then put you through secondary gates, for example, with multi-factor authentication, to make sure that if you're not on campus, that you're at least coming to the your virtual lab from, let's say, an IP address in the US, or an IP address that is not known as a risky IP address, or coming in with what potentially are leaked credentials. So all the security capabilities that you get with Azure AD for authentication also will help protect that virtual lab. And now, as you see, Chris on his iPad is connecting to a virtual desktop. Oh, I understand your concern about having machines sitting on campus not being used. I think it's going to be probably true for most everybody on this call. I was working with a client yesterday, and they ended up shutting down most of their buildings after a few management meetings in the morning. So it's difficult to plan for that sort of event.
And there we are. So this is actually a Windows 10 desktop on my iPad. And you'll see, so I can still use my keyboard. I can access all of my information. And I'm just using my finger to drag the stuff around. Or if I want to, I can actually tell it, I want to use it in like a mouse scenario. And this actually, so I just move my finger around to move this mouse. And then I can go ahead and double tap the screen just like I would a mouse. I actually have a mouse, and I've actually tied that into my iPad. So I can use a mouse with my iPad as well. Super convenient, fun, and easy to use. This creates a great accessibility for students if you guys do a one-to-one initiative and you still need them to have access to higher end resources. If we look at things like Photoshop, the Adobe Creative Cloud Suite, I had AutoCAD on here for a little while. So there are a bunch of things that you can do all from within this iPad. Really, I used it for 2 weeks when I had to send my laptop back one time for a really great end user experience. I have tried it, tested it. It works great. I have no complaints. Does anybody have any questions? Okay. Well,
All right.
on that note,
We'll give you back the balance of your time. We'll grab a coffee, wash your hands, get some hand sanitizer. Stay safe, people. We'll send a follow-up email out to each of you individually with links to resources and this video once it is done being processed. And we thank you so much for your time. If you have any questions specifically for your institution and want to reach out, we're happy to chat with you about where we've seen successes and where we've twisted our ankles. So hopefully you don't have to. You've got your contact information is in the invite, so please, again, feel free to reach out if and when appropriate. Again, thank you for your time, and we'll hopefully talk soon.
thank you guys so much. It's been really great working with you guys. Have a wonderful day. Stay safe. Wash your hands. And please, one last thing I can ask of you, because it's my public service announcement everywhere I go. If you're posting on social media, please fact check before you repost. It's the biggest thing we're facing right now, a part of our public health crisis. The two main websites you should be looking at are the World Health Organization and the CDC for guidance, as well as local and state government. Please fact check before you post. It's the biggest thing that we can do individually to help combat this virus, because misinformation is spreading far faster than any of the virus could possibly spread. Thank you guys so much, and have a wonderful day.